Joint Landowners Coalition of New York is moving forward with a lawsuit over the long-delayed hydrofracking review. The coalition is getting help from the Mountain State Legal Foundation, and they've sent a letter to the Department of Environmental Conservation Commissioner Joe Martens demanding he give a date for the review's release. With me now from Binghamton tonight to explain what this is all about is Joint Landowners Coalition's attorney, Scott Kurkoski. Scott, thank you very much for joining me this evening. So before we get started here, I do want to just ask you, February 13th, you want to have some sort of date from the DEC saying when they're going to be finally releasing the state environmental review, which has been this long delayed document on hydrofracking that we haven't seen yet from the state. What do you basically hope to compel them to do, and what's the ultimate goal of this lawsuit should it have to be filed by February 14th?
Well, as you know, we've been at this process now for more than half a decade. So we're almost on 6 years now that the DEC has been preparing the SGEIS. Taxpayer dollars have been spent on public hearings and public comments, and we've gone through 2 separate versions and regulations that have lapsed, and the state hasn't gotten those done. And so it's clear that the landowners at this point have no choice but to commence this action against the state to compel the state to do its job under the law.
Now, I mean, it sounds like you're kind of getting ready for the lawsuit. I mean, do you expect them to set a date before the lawsuit's actually released? And I guess kind of as a follow-up to that, what sort of information do you expect to gain as a result, say, through a discovery phase of any potential legal challenge to this?
You know, ideally, we would like the governor and the DEC to do what is right. And what is right here is not to delay this any longer for political purposes. It is to move forward with an opportunity that we have in our state, that we especially have here in the southern tier where I live, and do what other states and even the President of the United States have been doing, capitalizing on this opportunity both for jobs and to reduce carbon emissions, help climate change, and help our energy, reduce our dependency on foreign oil. Those are all of the reasons why we should be moving forward, and yet our state is not getting that done. So, you know, we served the demand letter today on the DEC. We would like the DEC to give us a date on when it will complete the SGIS. But the truth is that, you know, we're forced to follow through with this lawsuit, but we'd prefer not to. We just want the state to do what it should.
If you could, tell us who are the Mountain States Legal Foundation? What's this organization, and how did they come across this issue? What's their say in this?
Well, as you know, we've been talking about the fact that we're going to file a lawsuit against the state now for several months. In November, we were contacted by its president, William Perry Penley, the president of Mountain States Legal Foundation. The Mountain States has been around since 1977. They've appeared before the United States Supreme Court a number of times, including just a couple of weeks ago with one of their attorneys, Steve Lechner. And their goal is to defend landowner right cases like ours. So we've had their attention for some time, but now they've committed to moving forward with the Joint Landowner Coalition with our 70,000 landowners so that the rights of landowners in New York can be protected.
One thing about this hydrofracking debate here in Albany is that, you know, it seems like we've all kind of learned a lot about the regulatory review process that the state government has in place. And one thing that you say here at the end of this letter to Joe Martens is that the SGEIS, the State Generic Environmental Impact Statement, can't actually be delayed. It has to, I guess, essentially be released at some point. That release of that document doesn't necessarily mean hydrofracking permits will be granted, though, no, right? I mean, there's still more of a permitting process that the state has to go through once that document's released. What do we hope to learn, or what does your group hope to learn in the SGIS?
But remember that the completion of the SGIS is the first step of that process. You know, in 2008, our legislature approved the new rules for hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling, and it was signed by our governor. So we've simply been waiting for this SGIS to help implement the law that was passed in 2008. That's that first step. So as soon as the SGIS is approved, then we can move forward with permits in the state, and that's truly the way we'll be able to capitalize on this opportunity.
I do want to ask you about Joe Martens testifying before the Assembly Senate budget hearing, but first, just one last question on this. Ultimately, trying to get some sort of permitting process done for this. I mean, do you expect that, say, a health review process will come out and show that it's still safe? And the DEC has even said with the corollary to announcing that health review was that permits can still move forward even if the SGICE isn't completed. I mean, yes, they have muddied the waters a little bit with the regulatory review process here, but they haven't necessarily ruled out submitting permits before the SGICE is released. I mean, do you expect the state to make a decision on this sometime this year?
Look, the timing of our lawsuit is important because just this week, Commissioner Martens testified in a legislative hearing that there are no plans to issue permits at all this year. At the very earliest would be 2015, but no plans at all. So it's clear to us, and it should be clear to everyone, that our state has no intention of moving forward. Unfortunately, while the president, with his all-of-the-above energy policy, and governors of other states all moving forward with these opportunities, our governor refuses to lead on the issue of energy. He continues to duck it, but that's the purpose of the lawsuit, is to really compel the state again to do its job. And, you know, we heard from Commissioner Martens recently, but simply that they have no plans to do anything forward. Where has the DEC been on this issue? The DEC has been completely silent for years, and they're not weighing in. This public debate is ongoing about whether we should be moving forward or not, but the DEC is completely absent from the discussion. That's not true in other states. Other states' DECs or Department of Environmental Protection Commissions, they're active. Our EPA Administrator, Gina McCarthy, recently sent a letter to various environmental organizations explaining some of the work that the Environmental Protection Agency has been doing. Why is our DEC not engaged? And most people believe it's because the governor doesn't want them to be engaged until after this next election.
One thing that a lot of concern has been raised, I would say, on both sides of this issue, including the very active environmental side of this issue, has been one of transparency, where it was the health commissioner, Narav Shah, at a cabinet meeting, I think it was late last year, said that there will be transparency after the process of determining whether high volume hydraulic fracturing can be safe, not during this process. Talking to a lot of people on both sides of this, they've expressed frustration with that comment because they say, well, this process should be done a lot more openly. Obviously, your organization feels that it should be done in a more expeditious fashion. Ultimately, do you think some sort of transparency will be forced out by the courts? I guess it goes back to my discovery question from earlier.
Well, remember, Commissioner Shah said that he would complete his health review in 3 weeks. That was a year ago. What's he done in 3 weeks? To your transparency question, we sure would like to know, and we might have that opportunity to ask him in a deposition within these proceedings. But most people believe that not much has gone on. You know, the entire country of England studied the health impacts in our country based upon the millions of wells that we drilled in this country and determined that the process is safe, consistent with every other health study, and now England and other areas in Europe are moving forward with the process of hydraulic fracturing. We need to do the same thing in New York. Our EPA administrator says it's safe, the former administrators say it's safe, and the President of the United States would not be encouraging the greater use of natural gas if he didn't believe that this was safe as well.
And just lastly, before we go, I have to ask you, kind of a process question here, but the courts don't necessarily take a very quick time in deciding certain things like this either. What sort of assurance do you have that making this a legal challenge will be able to compel the state faster than the state would be in making its decision after Election Day?
Well, keep in mind that this is an Article 78 proceeding, so this proceeding is going to move along faster than a lot of court proceedings that you usually see. Our timing on this is specific. We've issued the demand for the DEC to respond by April 13th, and on April 14th, if there's no response, we will serve our petition. That petition will be returnable on March 7th. Our intention is to really have our case heard at the same time that a companion case is heard, and that's the case of Norse Energy. Norse Energy is a company that was driven into bankruptcy by the state's delay, and they have a similar argument that we're making. But instead, we want to make sure that the court understands that our 70,000 landowners with the Joint Landowner Coalition of New York want this process to move forward. And now we have the Mountain States Legal Foundation and their resources to help us do that.
Alrighty, thanks very much for your time tonight, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you.